Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in our Women's Issues Think Tank. We are talking about caregiving today. Part two, I want to thank our Vice President, Victoria Pilati, for putting this together. And my name is Cecilia Fenosta-Weigel. I'm the president of the Center for the Women of New York. And I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you. The people that you take care of are very lucky to have you. Just wanted to tell you that, and we're here to support you. In this stage of life, when you take care of others, is very challenging, but it's good to have a support system. So the center's here for you when you need us. And now I would like to turn it over to our amazing executive director, Raquel Charia.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Center for the Women of New York, our Zoom space. We appreciate you coming on for this workshop today. Thank you for those who were seeing beautiful faces behind the camera. And I know that many of us sometimes join and multitask. So we appreciate you so much. We hope that at the end of today's think tank, you will take away so much information, or at least ways that we can support or continue to support you. We are a team today here at the center. We have Lana behind the scenes, Victoria, thank you so much, our vice president and board member, and Cecilia, kind enough to join us today with her busy day and schedule, our president. So we will walk you through this as quickly as possible, but also leave you with as much meaningful information as possible too. So thank you. Lana, we can go ahead. I think one of the most important questions today for our presenters is understanding where you are in this process. So if you can take a moment and either drop it in the chat. If you do not have chat features or ability, if you're driving, something like that, feel free to unmute or ask to unmute, and we can, share with the presenters. I think it's a great gauge for us to understand what support you need once we end this session. And again, we are the Center for the Women of New York, a thriving organization that is ready to serve all women of New York. And as you can see in the next slide, we are proud to have not one, but two locations. Here, one, our house on the, I guess if you're looking at the screen on the left, this is our location in Fort Totten Park in Bayside. For those of you who do not know, it's, I guess it's a little off of Bell Boulevard before you get to the Throgs Neck Bridge. But it's a beautiful, beautiful building where most of our holistic programs happen. But again, hopefully to be our sanctuary soon with more and more participants joining us. The second location, we have an office at Queensboro Hall, which is more easily accessible by public transportation. So you have a lot of buses, trains, and very close proximity to so many of the city's agencies and support systems. Here's just a quick overview of the programs that we currently and historically have provided for the women of New York. You can also find this comprehensive list on our website at CWNY.org. And we hope that you come and take advantage of many of them. If you ever need to look back at some of our past recordings or events, please feel free to take a look at our extensive library on our website, and you can even learn some important information if you've missed any of our sessions. We will have an opportunity for questions and answers, especially from our presenters today. However, it does help if you want to populate the chat with some of your questions. As I mentioned, we have a team and we can try and answer them during the chat, or the presenters will have them beforehand as they start to present their topics and answer any of the concerns or questions you have. During the Q&A at the end, we would love to engage with you. We would love for you to come off camera if you can, because I think it's so important important that you understand this is your safe space, but this is also the place that we can support you. We know so many of us in this city right now are overwhelmed with the processes and the systems, and we're here to help. So I would like to turn it over to Victoria now, and we can start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel. So I'm Victoria Pilati, Vice President and moderator of today's think tank panel discussion. And we have with us presenters from Sunnyside Community Services and Carino Law. Now, we came up with this issue because we partner with Queensboro Council for Social Welfare with the Center for the Women of New York on a weekly caregiver support group by phone. And the question continually comes up, what do I do? What are my next steps? My loved one is slowly deteriorating. Health issues are becoming too difficult for me to handle. What are my next steps? What do you know about facilities? What do you know about home health aides? How can we afford it? So that's where this discussion comes from today. And our first presenter will be Christine Francis, the Activities Coordinator from Western Queens Sunnyside Community Services, Inc., followed by Michelle S. Carino, the Founder and Managing Director of Carino Law. And then following her presentations, we will again remind you that your questions are important, and then we will field your questions. So we welcome now Christine Francis.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. As she said, my name is Christine Francis. I am from Sunnyside Community Service. I'm boarded in Western Queens, which is Long Island City. We do have 2 offices. So the main office is in Sunnyside on 39th Street. And let's get started on today's presentation. Can you guys see the screen? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. One moment. Let's make this bigger. All right, so as I said, I'm from Sunnyside Community Service and I am the Activities Coordinator. So today's agenda for our presentation is about us. So I will be introducing our organization, which is Sunnyside's program, our caregiver program, which is the program that I work for. And I will be giving you a definition and example of a caregiver. So who is a caregiver, the information and contact information for our services. So programs. So these are different programs that Sunnyside provides. So we do provide youth programs, we provide adults and immigration services, and also for older adults. So within the youth and family service programs, we do provide career and readiness and college readiness programs for youth. We also have a program for younger children, which is the Sunnyside Pre-K and 3K program, which is for like younger babies. And we do have after school and summer programs, and these programs are free. So for the adults and immigration services, we do have immigration legal services. So we help you fill out your immigration forms. If you have any questions or need any legal help, we do provide that service. We also provide English classes for non-English speakers. And then for the older adults, we do have the Social Adult Day program. It's not as active as the Center for Older Adults, which is more active. In the Center for Adults, they do yoga, meditation, dancing, and also artwork. And then the Social Day program is more of like a relaxation time. We do have home care services, and the older adult center also offers counseling because the older adult center is different from the caregiver program. So they do have separate counseling. So this is our program. So our program is the Western Queens program. So we provide service and support for caregivers caring for someone with chronic illness, someone with Alzheimer's or other dementia. And then we do have a new program. It is called Kinship, and it is for grandparents caring for grandchildren. And our program is funded by the New York State Department of Health and the New York State Department of Aging. And all of our services are free for caregivers regardless of their documentation status. So who is a caregiver? So a caregiver is someone who provides help to a person. A caregiver does not have to be a family member. It could be a friend or a neighbor and also a church member. A caregiver does not have to live with the person that they are caring for. And finally, a caregiver may help with personal tasks such as finance, handling medical appointments, and more. And the district that we serve. So we do serve District 1 through 7. And for example, these are some districts. We serve Astoria, Garden Bay, Woodside, Sunnyside, of course, Corona, East Elmhurst, and Jackson Heights. We do serve more, but these are just the broad caregiver services. So these are the services that Western Queens provide. So we do have individual and family counseling. We do respite service, which is in-home or group setting, educational and training sessions. These sessions are the sessions that I conduct as the activities coordinator. So some training examples would be on how to avoid scam and how to avoid being scammed out of your EBT benefits as an older adult, because that's the main population that is being scammed at the moment. Then we do have activities that promote self-care, and we assist with benefits and entitlement. And then also we assist with caregiving expenses. So we do have counseling support, which is a one-on-one session with a caregiver support specialist. So we also have support group. So support group is connecting with other caregivers in the group, and this group is facilitated by a caregiver specialist. Different option of group setting meeting would be on the telephone, virtual, which is on Zoom, and also we can do in person. It's up to you. And we do have different language options. We have Spanish, English, Mandarin, and also Russian. And these are the information and the assistance that we provide. So we provide long-term care planning, legal resources, and necessary documents. As I said before, we have legal services. So if you need that, we can provide that for you. We do have nursing home. We help with Medicaid and Medicare. We have a specialist for that. At the end of the presentation, I'll give you the contact information. We do help with guidance with eligibility for SNAP, housing. And then we also connect you guys to the appropriate resources if we're not able to provide the sources and the services that you guys need. And financial and assistance for caregivers. So for this assistance, we do provide services for purchasing medical supplies, assistance with medical copay or prescriptions, household expenses. We do assist with applying for grants, and as I said, connecting you guys with other agencies for financial support and services. And respite service. So respite means a break for the caregiver. So if you're a caregiver, this means taking a break as being a caregiver. It is a temporary home and it's temporarily social adult day program. And grandparent. So this is a new program that we have came across. So it is called Grandparent Kinship Caregivers. So it is for older relatives, not parents, ages 55 and older, providing care for a child or children under the ages of 18. Examples of a grandparent caregiver, it is a grandparent, or it can also be your aunt and your uncle. And the terms that we use is grandfamilies and kin care. And the eligibility. So to be eligible for our services, the caregiver or the care receiver must live in New York City. If they do not live in New York City, we can provide resources to the connections, and the caregiver or the person they're caring for has to be someone that has Alzheimer's disease or dementia or any chronic illness. And as I said, for the kinship care, it has to be an older adult caring for a family member, which is a younger child. And for certain services, the caregiver or the care receiver must be, as I said before, ages 55 or 60. And this is our contact information. So we do have an intake line, and I'll read the number for you and also the email. So for our Care Connection, our phone number is 877-577-9337. Again, for our intake line, the phone number is 877-577-9337, and the email is carenyc@scsny.org. Again, the email is carenyc.scs.org. So if you have any contact information of someone that needs these services, you can call the phone number or also email them. And you can get further information on our website at www.scesny.org. And you can also call 311 if the intake line is not answering, if you guys need help at the moment. And furthermore, we are not a emergency team or system. We are a service provider, and we have eligibilities. And as I said before, we do have Medicaid specialists. So if you need help applying for Medicaid, our phone number is 718-784-6160. Again, if you need help applying for Medicaid, the number to call is 718-784-6160. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you. And if you guys have any questions, I'll answer.
Thank you so much, Christine. And again, to the audience, if you do have questions, please write them in the chat. And you can also ask Christine your questions after Michelle's presentation. So our next presenter is Michelle Carino from Carino Law, and she will also share her slides.
Can you see them?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to everyone at the center, and thank you all for participating this morning. My name is Michelle Carino. I'm an attorney in Queens, located in Bayside. My practice, as Victoria explained, focuses mainly on family issues, as particularly related to doing estate and asset planning and Medicaid planning. So I'm happy to share some information with you this morning about planning for Medicaid, qualifying for care, and most importantly, the issue that comes up most frequently is issues surrounding protecting your home or your loved one's home if you are the caregiver. Just a quick disclaimer, because of course I'm a lawyer and we always add these types of disclaimers. So this is not legal advice. I'm providing you the information that is currently most available. But, you know, I counsel you to reach out to an attorney if you have specific legal questions or are seeking legal advice. Okay. What is Medicaid? Medicaid is a needs-based healthcare program. It has different offerings that covers all kinds of healthcare needs. It includes nursing home and institutional care, like in a rehabilitation center. There also are a number of community-based programs, some of which are dependent on whether you meet certain needs or whether you meet certain other criteria. And then there's also one of the community-based programs is home care. That's the one that most people are most familiar with, that comes up most often, because a lot of people that you're caring for would prefer to stay at home as long as they possibly can. So for qualification, there are 4 basic criteria for Medicaid qualification, and each one of these areas has its own separate tests. The first one, of course, is because it's a needs-based program, is that you have to meet certain medical criteria. If you are blind or disabled, not able to do certain daily living activities, there's a whole different medical assessment to determine the level of care that you're entitled to. We're not really going to be going into that area too much today, but that would be something that you would discuss with your healthcare provider. The other parts of this, which oftentimes are more the legal area, are the asset test, the income test, and the transfer test. And you basically have to meet each one of these tests in order to receive benefits. So I know there's a lot of information here, and I'm trying to make it as digestible as we can. So this is very high level introductory, but just to give you sort of a sense of how this process begins. For Medicaid purposes, certain assets are considered countable. That includes things like cash, bank accounts, investment accounts, life insurance policies that have cash value, vehicles, and real estate. Non-countable, which we also refer to as exempt, generally the most significant non-countable asset is your primary residence. In New York State, there's a home equity exemption of $1,071,000. So if your home has a home equity within this range, you will still be considered exempt. Your personal belongings, one vehicle, and a burial fund are also considered non-countable. In New York, another thing that's very important for older people who are applying is that certain retirement accounts, like your IRA or a 401k, will also be exempt assets and will only be counted on the income side of the equation, which we'll get to in the next slide. So on the income side, if you have already analyzed, what the assets look like, the things that fall into this column are going to be basically the money that comes into you every month that you're living on. So that's usually wages. For elderly people that are retired, it might be a pension and Social Security. If there's been a significant inheritance or you're receiving regular gifts, if you do have an annuity of some kind or other investments. People who live in two-family homes in Queens, a lot of times they'll be renting out a second apartment. That will also count as income. Money that you receive from IRA distributions also is income. When you are applying, again, there's different criteria for different types of care. If the person that you're caring for is going to be placed in a nursing home permanently, then Medicaid only looks at that applicant's income. If you're applying for home care and there are spouses, then the income of both spouses will be included to determine eligibility. The asset and income levels were increased in 2023. It was actually, I know sometimes people look at these numbers and are like, well, these numbers are still ridiculous, but they're actually an improvement over what they had been in 2022. So again, for the asset and income tests, Medicaid looks at what is your monthly income and how many assets do you hold? What is the value of those assets? And again, we are breaking it down into two of the broadest categories here, nursing home and home care. So for single applicants, the monthly income limit is $1,732. It's essentially somewhere equivalent to receiving Social Security, disability. The asset level in terms of cash, bank accounts, etc., is $30,182 for a single applicant. Again, we're presuming here that your primary residence where you live is excluded and is not a countable asset. The numbers are a little higher if there are two applicants, both of whom are applying. The income limit is a little higher and the asset limit is a bit higher. And if it's a situation where there's one well spouse and one sick spouse, and there's only one person applying, that gets a little bit more complicated. For nursing home care, you're allowed to shift income from one spouse to another so that you do not leave the well spouse that's still at home impoverished. There are calculations that are made in that situation. For home care, though, even if only one applicant is applying, the well spouse and the sick spouse still have the same combined income level and the same combined asset level. So that can be a little bit trickier. And a lot of times we have to make certain planning decisions if there's a sick spouse and a well spouse. The final category is probably the biggest obstacle for folks in terms of understanding how to qualify. Again, there are different determinations on the transfer test depending on whether you're applying for nursing home care or if you're looking for care at home. Everyone always talks about the 5-year look back. This is actually a federal law. It's not controlled by New York State, but the federal law is that for nursing home care, there is a 60-month look back period, which means that Medicaid looks back in the prior 60 months to determine if there were any transfers of any assets that you made without receiving any value for the purposes of trying to qualify for care. And if you've made transfers, for example, people often say, well, I'm just going to give it to my children now. That's the biggest one is, okay, you know, I have this account and I want to make sure my children can get it and I'm not doing well right now and I need to get care. I don't want to exhaust all of my assets. I'm going to give it to my children now. I'm going to gift it to them. Well, Medicaid, you know, does not take the same view of those intentions. So if you've given gifts to your children or you've given assets away to even friends, even certain charitable donations, Medicaid is going to look back at your bank account statements and other financial documents. And if they feel you've given something away that you haven't received value for, they may impose a penalty period during which they will not pay for care. There are ways to undo some of that if that's happened inadvertently. Sometimes, you know, you've made gifts and someone becomes sick within that 60-month period. So it's not only for the purpose of qualifying for care, but sometimes it's inadvertent. So there are ways that that would need to be addressed in order for you to receive care. The biggest issue right now that's very prominent is that in 2019, before the pandemic started, the New York State legislature passed a law that suggested or allowed Medicaid to adopt a look-back period for home care, which previously the period for look-back for home care was 0. There's never been one. So if you'd made asset transfers, you could qualify for care the following month. And that was something that, you know, legal practitioners often told people, oh, transfer the assets, wait a month and we'll apply for coverage and you'll get care. Now, if you're getting home care, because the legislature changed this law, they can implement it pretty much now at any time. When the pandemic began, this implementation was completely put on the back burner because of the pandemic. Now, they originally had said that they were going to start implementing this last year. They were unable to do so because this is a monumental overhaul of eligibility determination for home care. So they put it off until March 31st, 2024. I've been checking the Department of Health website for an update on this. They are still listing March 31st, 2024 as the new date. But I have spoken to a number of people in the industry. Almost everyone thinks that it's going to be put off another year because Medicaid hasn't put in any of the guidelines yet for how this would even work. It seems that they're greatly understaffed. And so it looks like for right now, if you're going to need care, your assets transferred in the previous 30 months are not going to be subject to review right now. What this means is that if you think that applying for Medicaid is in your future or in your care recipient's future, it would be very important for you to try to start this planning now so that this way, if you know, maybe you don't get Medicaid for another year, you at least have a framework in place to start from. Okay. This happens almost always. I will tell you that when I do applications for Medicaid for clients, they're almost always rejected the first time that they apply. almost always. It's just kind of like, just like any other insurance you deal with, car insurance, health insurance, the knee-jerk reaction of an insurance carrier is to reject your claim. And Medicaid is really no different in that regard. A lot of times we'll submit things, they'll reject it for a number of reasons, and then you're placed where you need to respond. And it doesn't mean you ultimately won't get coverage, just that there's going to be a process. So this is not going to be an immediate situation. It's going to require a lot of patience and a lot of persistence. If it turns out that you've applied and you don't qualify, or if you'd like to figure out now, maybe you already know based on that prior slide that your assets are too high, the income is too high. I'm not even going to bother. I'm just going to have to, have my loved one run out of money, and then we'll have to deal with it. That's not true either. And even though it may seem discouraging, it's important that you don't adopt that mindset either. There are lots of legal strategies that are available to help you meet eligibility requirements either before you apply, which is the most ideal, or even if you're already in the process of applying. And there are other strategies. If you're already in crisis and you have immediate care needs, there are ways that we could try to preserve some of the assets. And I've identified a couple here, all of which, merit a separate conversation. But just to give you a sense that there are options that you can explore in terms of trying to meet eligibility requirements and still preserving assets, and also looking at, if you're over the monthly income limits, how is that going to work? There are ways to create trusts. There are ways also that are approved by Medicaid for a friend, loved one, or caregiver to be paid for providing services on a regular basis. There are accepted service provider contracts that anyone can use that are approved by Medicaid if you're the caregiver, where you could actually be paid for services, and that's a legitimate expense for a Medicaid recipient, which would allow them possibly to still achieve eligibility. There are also certain transfers that are permitted. Transfers to a spouse or a disabled child that still lives at home. It could be an adult child that lives at home. Those transfers are permissible. If assets were already previously transferred, sometimes we can do sort of what we call repayment, and we create a promissory note that satisfies Medicaid. And then also, a lot of people have heard, oh, I need to put everything in a trust. That solution is applicable in certain cases, and it will help protect assets in the long term. So probably the question that I get most often from people that are worried about their situation, if they need to go in a nursing home ultimately, if they're getting care in a house, at home, people often say, well, Medicaid's going to force me to sell my house and I'm going to have to go into a nursing home. Or, my mom is at home. I'm afraid they're going to force her in because we're not going to be able to pay for care. So this is the question that comes up most frequently that I hear. So the answer is a bit complicated. It's not a straight up yes or no. Medicaid can lien your house, but not in the ways that you think. So if you remember, we just spoke a few minutes ago, when you apply for Medicaid, a primary residence of up to $1,071,000 is exempt for qualification. So if you are living in your house and you are applying for home care benefits, your house is an exempt asset and Medicaid cannot force you to sell it. They will not force you to sell it because, frankly, your receiving care at home is less expensive to the state than placement in a nursing home. So as long as you are in your home and receiving care, that house remains exempt and you cannot be forced to sell. You will not be forced to sell. If your loved one temporarily goes into a nursing home, examples, a lot of times people need rehabilitation services. They may go for 3 months or 6 months and then return home. In those circumstances, if you go into a facility temporarily from anywhere from 3 months to a year, And when you are admitted to the facility, you indicate an intent to return home, and you should voice that to a social worker at the time of admission, that you intend to return home, you intend for your loved one to come home. Your house remains exempt during that period of time. So again, Medicaid will not force you to sell your house, but if for some reason your house is no longer an exempt asset, for example, now it's been empty for 2 years because your loved one has been in the nursing home now for 2 years, and it really, based on medical advice, doesn't look like they'll be able to return home, then Medicaid may determine that your house is no longer exempt. And then, that situation has to be addressed in order to continue receiving care. If your home remains exempt during your lifetime, okay? So in other words, you never wind up having to sell it during your life. You're either in it or you're in a facility where you intend to return home. Under federal law, Medicaid is allowed upon your passing to place a lien on the property to try to seek reimbursement from your estate. So the loved one themselves may be able to live out their lifetime in that home. However, under federal law, Medicaid does have the right to lien the property after they pass to seek reimbursement for care. In New York, I will tell you that is uncommon. It doesn't happen very often. It oftentimes will not happen if there's a house that is owned jointly, because in that circumstance, it passes automatically from one spouse to the other, and Medicaid never imposes the lien. But under federal law, the state has the availability of this option. So it's important to be aware of it, even if the probability of it happening is, I can't tell you. This shifts depending on, state policy, basically. So this is something, though, that's why we should be aware of it and try to plan for it if possible. So what are the options to protect the house? If it's a person who owns their house by themselves, and they're not currently applying for care, one proactive strategy is to take the house and place it in a Medicaid asset protection trust. Medicaid cannot lien that trust if it's properly drafted. And even after that person passes, the property would be handled under the terms of the trust and would never require being probated by a court. So therefore, there would be no impositions of a lien. If you're already in crisis, you still are not necessarily going to lose your home. You can transfer your interest to a qualifying family member. That would generally be a spouse, a disabled child who resides there, certain family members that are also on the deed, other adult children who have lived in the home for more than 2 years. And it has to be their residence for 2 years. And then you might be able, under certain rules, to transfer to them in a crisis. Crisis planning option number 2 is to basically sell your interest and retain the right to live there for life. Very often, if it's important to your children to keep the house, or you really want to keep the house in a family, we basically create a promissory note. We change the deed so that you have a right to live there for the rest of your life. And then we set up a schedule for your loved ones to make payments in some amount in consideration for the transfer. And then this is permitted because you are receiving value, so there's no penalty, and you still retain the right to live there for your life. So the key takeaways here are that it's always better to try to be proactive if you can. I would say that Medicaid is a labyrinth full of pitfalls and traps. So if you can consult with experts and specialists, such as the people at Sunnyside, or with an attorney or an elder law specialist, there are a lot of planning strategies. and you may not even be aware of them. So I really advise you to reach out to others who are well-versed in this area because it is very complicated. When you do your application, if you decide to do it on your own, or even if you do it through an agency, a social worker, or an attorney, keep copies of everything you submit to Medicaid. Medicaid is notorious for losing things and then telling you they never got them. So it's best if you keep copies. I always send everything to Medicaid by some carrier where I get tracking so that I can establish that they actually received it. That has come in handy in the past when they've told me they didn't get things on time, and I have a receipt that shows, yes, you did. Here's the date I mailed it, and here's the tracking to show you got it. So it's very important. It is a bureaucracy. It is understaffed. Keep your own records. Don't be discouraged if you are rejected the first 1 or 2 times. You're going to need to be persistent, and you're going to need to be patient. If you need to use the appeals process because you think a rejection wasn't correct, or you think there's a mistake, or you think that the budget's not right, use the appeals process. Sometimes it's the only way to get things resolved is to escalate them beyond the initial care social worker that's assigned. And also, I would say for Medicaid, be mindful of deadlines. It's a big headache if you miss a deadline by accident. They are gracious and can give you extensions, but try to be aware of that so that you don't lose the ability to make adjustments and get stuck with a decision that then they tell you have to wait some extended period of time before you can change. Here are some websites that offer some information for you to do some further investigation on your own. New York Health Access, the American Council on Aging has a lot of Medicaid information. Some of it is state specific and some of it just explains some of the Medicaid terms that are used. And then of course, New York State Department of Health, if you go to that website, you can find the forms for submission. You can find the Medicaid guidelines, the income and asset limits, and then, updates on the program as well. So I hope that that's been helpful. I know it's a lot of information to digest, but, again, this is just the starting point. So I hope that it's been helpful. And if you have more questions, you could always reach out to the center. And also, this is my information. You can also reach out to me and I'll try to address your questions as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And also thank you, Christine.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So again, if you have any questions, you can add them to the chat, or if you dialed in, you can write to events, that's events at cwny.org. And also you can just raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask your question if you're here present. And then we're going to say a few words about the Center for the Women of New York. We have on our website, you can type cwny.org and then type in caregivers. We have resources for caregivers. And again, Sunnyside Community Services. This is their website, qcswny.org. And you can reach Michelle at mcarino@carinolaw.com. And here's her telephone number again. And our partner organization with our caregiver phone support group also has services, and you could reach them at qcswnyc@gmail.com. And these are our current services and programs. And do become a member. We'd love to have you join us. at cwny.org/membership, or if you'd like to donate, cwny.org/donations. We appreciate all donations, however small. And these are our 2 locations. And do follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter or X, and we do have a YouTube channel and a podcast channel. Okay, so we're ready for questions. We already have one. Go ahead, Raquel.
Before we take questions, I just would like Joyce Ramirez. She's on the call. She's the Medicaid enroller, and I think she wants to take a minute just to introduce herself.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. So my name is Joyce Ramirez, and I'm a Medicaid enroller at Sunnyside Community Services. I assist clients that are referred to me with the Medicaid process of doing the application, assisting with the application, and submitting it to our HRA department, medical department, and also all the clients follow up with me in reference to if they are approved into enrolling them into the managed long-term care home care service. I also assist with that at Sunnyside. The main number that the young lady gave you, if they need assistance with that, they can call Sunnyside and then they'll refer it to me and I'll get in contact with the client that needs the assistance. Or they could call me directly also at the number that she provided, which was 718-784-6160, and they will redirect it to me. Sorry, I'm having problems with my camera. I'm so sorry. I'm working from home.
Problem, Joyce. Thanks for the information.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Michelle, thank you so much for
being
here. And I think, a lot of what I'm experiencing here at the center too, and I'm sure many, Victoria, the board, it's the fear, right? That stops people in their tracks from making decisions. So I think we always, approach things from education, right? Educating people about not only their rights, but about the processes. And I think that's where you come in. That's where Christine comes in, and that's why these spaces and these programs and these workshops are so important. So I hope that you and Donna connect, and Donna, you can get, some guidance and help. We thank you. We have another question from Lorinda in the chat. Lorinda, thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable and
you guys
a little bit.
This is amazing. Not that I understand everything, but I have 2 questions. So I have a neighbor, but I've been taking care. She has dementia. None of the family wants to deal with her. So she has dementia. She has, I'm in a co-op. And I'm just overwhelmed with stuff. It's just my stuff. And I'll tell you, my aunt is also in dementia. But how do you do the family says, oh no, we're not blood relatives. I'm only a neighbor for 35 years. But so what do I do?
In that instance, I think that if she has no other one available to help her at home, then she's going to need for the court to appoint a guardian for her, a professional guardian that would be appointed through the court. So the court would vet who is appropriate. And then that person would become the guardian over her person and over her property. So she can go through a formal guardianship process to have someone appointed. If she's admitted...
Do I do it? Do I do that?
You can
I'm
file
a social worker.
Yeah, you could file a petition, and in the petition you say, not that you want to be the guardian, right? Because sometimes the petitioner says, please appoint me because I'm going to take care of this. But you would file the petition as a request. for someone, for the court to appoint, and then they would have an examiner appointed and an evaluator, and they would do it through mental health services through the court for someone to be appointed as her guardian. And then at that juncture, depending on her needs, decisions would need to be made about whether she can continue at home or if she would need to be placed into memory care or some other facility.
Right. Okay, second question, quick. My aunt she was in assisted living, now she's in a memory care. So she has an apartment, so we're less money. So do we keep the apartment? I mean, we're not, the money is really short. She's been in the assisted care for 2 years, and now she just went into memory care. She's good, but I guess they it's like $8,000 a month, and she has an apartment. So like, I don't want to go to her apartment, but is that an issue?
It can become an issue after 2 years if there's a medical determination that she's unlikely to return home ever.
Yeah.
Then her asset, the co-op becomes an asset. And,
Yes.
And then Medicaid in that circumstance may say, again, now it's not exempt. You're not there. You haven't been there for 2 years, and you've shown no indication you're ever going back. So in that case, now you have to do something with that asset, which would mean either somebody's going to buy it, or a family, however you want to manage it. But
I couldn't move. I mean, not that I want to, but I can't move into it because it's the 2 years.
Let's see. If you moved into it, the problem you have is that she's still on the stock and lease for the co-op.
Yes.
If you transfer the stock and lease to you for free, that's going to disqualify her from care because she's already in the facility, and she would be making a transfer of something worth something for free. So that they'll catch easily in an audit. And that will result in your now. You could buy it from her in some kind of installment situation. Like if you were living there and paying installments, we would set up a note, and the payments that you make. Like let's say for instance, you say, I'm going to pay all of the maintenance charges, and then plus I'm giving you $500 a month or $1,000, whatever we do, we figure out. Then she's receiving value for it. And that would be okay. That's a sales process. It'd basically be a private mortgage in a way. If that's another way of thinking about it. You'd be buying.
She has no mortgage either.
So that would be the other way to do it. Otherwise, if she's not going to return home, she's already there. Then your best option probably is going to be to sell it.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'll probably reach out to you because my brother is. We always say our siblings, my brother is like, oh no, we don't do anything. So thank you so much.
Sure. You're welcome.
Thank you, Lorinda, for
sharing. You guys were amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you both for sharing. And then I think we have one last question. And please feel free to reach out to Michelle. You have her info. And if not, you can always reach out to us and we will provide it. Lara,
and also if you need to leave because you have a commitment, we will have this recording available.
Yeah,
and that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, we have Lara with a question as well. If you want to unmute, Lara.
Hi, yes, thank you. This has been very helpful. I manage all the stuff for my mom, so that's why I was listening to this. And I've been thinking about applying for Medicaid for her, but she is above that income limit, so then I never did it. Because $1,700 is like nothing, and all she gets is Social Security, but the Social Security is $2,000.
Right. So if she's over the limit, what we do is we set up what's called a pooled income trust, because Medicaid will give you a budget, and it's usually that monthly number, and you're allowed to deduct healthcare insurance premiums. So if she's at 2,000, but she's obviously paying for Medicare. I think it's $160 $182 a month for Medicare. And if she has other supplemental insurance that she pays a premium for, sometimes people do, and then that's also an allowed deduction to get you sometimes into the income limit. So, but if she's over that by a small margin, well, there's two options. If she's over it by a large margin, we would use a trust. But if it's a small margin, let's say, for example, it's like, I mean, she's at 2,000, the limit is 81, whatever it is. It's like a couple of $100. Medicaid also has an option called excess income program. And basically what it is they look at your budget, figure out your excess, and then allow you to pay a premium to buy into Medicaid. So depending on where you are, where the break-even point is, sometimes it's less expensive to pay Medicaid an extra $150 a month to get benefits. Because remember now, if I'm going to wind up qualifying for home care, which costs $5,000 a month, right, and I have to pay $150 out of my income,
right,
you're still way ahead. So people get upset. They're like, oh, I don't want to pay any more money. I need this money to live on. Yeah, but if you need help in the home, and you know, home care is anywhere from $17 to $30 an hour, depending on how many hours you need and what level of care. You know, you're looking at anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000 a month to be at home full time. So if you can get Medicaid to defray some of that cost in exchange for you making an extra income payment, it's definitely worth it. If, like I said, if you're a certain amount above the income limits, then I would recommend the pooled income trust. We'd have to look at, you know, how far you fall on either side. And we look at what her monthly expenses are, if it makes sense to do that or not. But she's pretty close. So if you're that close, you could make that work. You can get her within the limits and get her eligible for care.
Okay. I think she doesn't need the anything now as far as like home care. I'm just kind of thinking about for the future.
Yeah, for the future, even in the future, you'd be able to figure that out. Like I said, you're really close. So, if you're slightly over like that, they'll bounce you the first time you apply. They'll be like, no, you're out. But then there's like these pages behind the rejection, and it describes the excess income program. And you go back and you elect that. You say, no, I'm going to do excess income. Allow me to pay. Sometimes they'll let, like, for example, if your mom really is using that money for groceries and stuff, they'll allow you, for example, to pay like 6 months ahead of time. You know, here's X amount, whatever the budget number is. Now you're eligible for those 6 months. You're good. You're within budget. And then they will revisit it after that time and you make another payment. You could pay it monthly, quarterly, you work it out, whatever makes the most sense for your family.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the question, Lara, because you've helped others who need to be proactive, because it can happen overnight. The loved one's health could change overnight. And now we have another question from Janice. Thank you, Janice. Welcome.
Am I muted? Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can't tell if I'm muted. Okay. My question is brief. My situation is bizarre. I take care of my aunt who's 104. So a lot of the things that can be done, I've been taking care of people forever. I've set up pool trusts. But my quick question is this. My aunt's income is not enough to cover all of her expenses. So I pay for things like services. And if there's a 5-year look back for me or a 2.5-year look back for me, are those gifts to her? She has a trust. It's not a Medicaid asset protection trust. It's just a revocable trust to protect the house, not to deal with probate, and to protect it from various relatives who have been missing for years and if they should resurface. So yeah, so that's basically my question. And that's something that I have to delve into, in detail with another attorney, with an attorney.
The answer is going to be, it depends. If
the services for the house, there's services for the gardener. I pay the gardener twice a year to maintain the property. I'm the trustee of the house. My name is on the deed. I have the freedom to enjoy the house. It's 100 years old, not enjoying it much. So I'm keeping her money to do big repairs. She's down to 50,000. 30,000 is what she's allowed if she needs to apply for Medicaid. Someone suggested spend out all her money. I don't want to do that because she
No.
needs that money to live on.
Yeah. No, it would
So
seem that in
again,
that
it's just a
circumstance,
quick, I mean, can I still continue to pay for things or do we just go without and just let it crumble?
no. If you reside in that house, then you're
And I've
even
been here for many more years than 2,
okay. Well, then
but I'm not a
that's
daughter. I'm a niece.
okay. But those still are not going to be considered gifts. You could almost label that as rent to a certain
Okay.
extent.
Even
You
though
know,
I'm not obligated to pay rent, but it's almost rent.
right?
It's a
It's
two-family
almost
house,
rent,
but I basically live in the same apartment as her because she needs to be watched.
right? Yeah. So no, I mean, I know it's to some extent it feels like semantics, but it isn't. You're residing there, you're getting a benefit, and for you to have to reimburse for that benefit of living there is not a gift.
Right. If the roof leaks on my head, it's if I don't do something about it.
Correct. So that's
Okay.
not a
So I don't
gift.
have to lose sleep over if I gonna, is this gonna come back to bite me, as it were?
No, it
Okay.
shouldn't. And again, if it came up in a review, what you would do is what I would do on your if you ever were applying and there's a page asks you for your, monthly expenses kind of thing. I would, average out the expenses that you are incurring or that you're making these payments, average out on a monthly basis what that comes out to and put that down as an expense to you because it's a necessity to
Yeah, because I'm
maintain
I'm
where you
covering
live.
all basic household food, sundries,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
in addition, things like $500 for somebody to come in and turn on a valve that I couldn't turn on because the water come, silly things, but stuff like that. And the
yeah,
gardening, because I have to maintain the property so she
yes,
doesn't get fined. Okay,
yes,
thank you.
absolutely. I don't think those are
Thank you.
gifts at all. I don't think, and I don't even
Yeah.
think, honestly, I don't think Medicaid would pick them up as gifts.
Okay.
And if they did, what you've described, uh, is
Yeah,
not a
because it's my
situation.
responsibility to manage the house. She's beyond managing
Yeah.
things.
The other thing you might consider then is whether, as her caregiver, you put some kind of like agreement in place, I guess, where are providing services to her kind of situation. Might be a useful document for you in the future to
Okay.
show that, there
Yeah,
is
I had a
this
personal
established
care
relationship.
services agreement that I drafted for my mom, and I just had
Yeah,
a lawyer run through. But it covers everything.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't want to take more time. Thank you. And I'll be in touch.
Okay, sure.
Thanks for the
You'll be
question.
overwhelmed.
Michelle, maybe one day you should come here and host some client sessions if you need.
That would be wonderful. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm happy to come in and, and I'm glad the information is useful to everyone.
Yeah. My biggest takeaway from this presentation, and I know we have one question in the chat, but just listening to your stories, like I'm going to be 50 this year. I have 3 sons, and just hearing, thanks, Donna, just hearing, stories at the center. The biggest takeaway I get from the work that we're doing and from partners like yourself and presenters is that there's hope. As long as we keep providing these spaces where people can come and get either information, get services, get connected, I think that's the greatest gift we can give to the women of New York. We want to continue doing that. So please continue spreading the word about our resources and our programs, because just like you and just like Victoria said earlier, each one of your stories resonates with someone here, and it helps someone. So thank you for being vulnerable, but thank you for sharing. I think Melissa
Yes. Oh,
had.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, Malini. Melissa just had a question in the chat. And then we'll go to Malini. Is a monthly $60 trust fee the norm? We qualify for Medicaid but get no money and other benefits. The monthly fees seem very high.
Is that a pooled trust question?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yes, thank you. It is a pool trust question. I just hear a lot that the recommendation is to open up a trust fund or a trust, and I did that, and I just was curious. I just went with what the agency was recommending, but I didn't shop around. I don't know anything about these trust fees. I feel like it's highway robbery sometimes, considering we have not even a $60 monthly fee, plus there's other registration fees, reactivation fees. So I was just curious, like, is that a normal thing, or did I just kind of get thrown to what was convenient for the agent that was setting it up?
Why did you think that you needed it in the first place?
For the same reasons that I think you've already explained a few examples. She has Social Security, she has retirement, so all of these things she wasn't going to qualify for.
Okay.
So, and I'm actually managing both of my parents, my mother and my father. My mother has, some memory, early Alzheimer's. So I'm a little bit more advanced with her. But I'm also trying to get ahead of what's happening with my father. So I had both of them set up with a trust, and now they both qualify. But like somebody else explained, we don't have any money to even pay the bills. So this $60 fee plus the other fees just seems really high. And I was just curious if anyone else had any feedback about that.
I have worked with a couple of the companies. I have a company that they're located in Brooklyn that I use for my pooled trust. I know that there are monthly service fees. It's generally a fee that's calculated based on the amount of money that is moving through the trust. So it's a percentage. It's not a flat trust fee. There is also an annual maintenance fee that's charged once a year. I would think also that you might want to explore, again, depending on how far you are over the income limits based on the Medicaid budget that you have, you might want to ask Medicaid to revisit, how much it would cost you to participate in the excess income program versus having the pooled income trust. I don't know where the math will work out for you, but at least it's a means of comparison to see, if you're just paying Medicaid every month to participate in the program versus maintaining these expenses on the trust side. I don't know where the break-even point would be for you. It's going to come down to the math. So, and again, some of it also, if you are at that point, you may also ask Medicaid to recalculate your parents' budget. And if you provide documentation of the monthly expenses that you normally incur, it is possible that they give you a variance and maybe they'll just increase your budget. And then, at that point, you won't need the trust at all. So those are two things that I would suggest is one, to find out how much the excess income program is going to cost you versus what you're currently paying on the trust side. And, number two is either now or at the time of renewal to go in and ask for a reevaluation of the budget and, provide the documentation that, listen, we're not making ends meet here. This is not working. And see if you could push it through that way. And if all else fails and you do need the trust, you always can use a different company. The company I use is KTS. They're in Brooklyn. Some of my clients complain that they're expensive too. I don't know how their fees compare to what you're paying. I know they charge fees, but I know also that it's a percentage of whatever assets or whatever income that they're managing. So I don't know. Maybe there is a way to shop around. So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you.
Also, Michelle, for Melissa, I think each pooled trust is supposed to allow a certain amount of leftover money for miscellaneous expenses every that you can do whatever needs to be done for that month. Is that going on right now where they are allowed a certain amount of money that doesn't pay the rent, that doesn't go toward this monthly expense. Is
Yeah.
that going on, Melissa?
Yeah, so for the spend down, they calculated what was needed to get, I guess, approved for Medicaid. And so there is something left over, but I guess it's just a game of that leftover. Can we put it in a place of savings instead of using it for spendings that aren't always justified? So I guess, but yeah, one thing I just wanted to add is I did plea with them and explain to them and showed them statements, and they did bring it down a bit. I think so if you have high fees with your trust companies, you could easily ask, and I was very insistent about it, and that was a good thing because they brought it down like $25 or something like that for each. But the other thing is, you were saying to reassess and reevaluate. What I came across when I needed to renew the Medicaid from my parents this year is the paperwork was, wow, confusing. I'm a smart girl, so I was like, this is a trap. And I really felt like I needed help. And I reached out to the one person that kind of helped apply originally. And she was like, do not change anything. She's like, because when you change it, then you might get denied and then it's a mess. And I felt very hesitant to make any changes or adjustments in the income without some guidance because of the paperwork being so confusing. So I was just curious. I know Joyce is on the call. She says she helps with Medicaid submittals, but sometimes it's very much related to whether or not they get approved for home care assistance, but it's not really supporting the Medicaid process as a whole. So I guess I am adding another question, sorry, but what do you do when you have to go back and reassess everything and it's confusing? Because Medicaid itself doesn't really allow or give any insight. Is there a service, or what are people doing? Are we all winging it? I don't know.
Did Joyce want to answer, or?
I also did the same thing. My neighbor was like, don't change anything. But I felt guilty. Like I didn't want to make a mistake. So.
I'm sorry. What was the question again? I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just so one of the recommendations that Michelle had when I was trying to figure out qualifying for Medicaid is to revisit the income, the financial, the expenses, and maybe reconsider using what is it called? The expense what did you call it?
The excess income program.
Excess income program. And there's also a few other expenses that I wanted to add, but when I consulted with a friend person that I originally helped me submit the application, she says, don't change anything. Like, you're risking getting approved again and it's not worth it. And I've heard that not just from her, I've heard that from a couple of people. And so I was hesitant to make changes, and I just didn't know if there was a resource out there that could probably walk me through the process a little bit more.
Okay, you did apply already, right? You applied for Medicaid already?
Yeah. So both of my parents both have Medicaid, but Michelle is recommending to reevaluate.
To reapply?
No, she was doing the renewal, and we were talking about whether, the budget that her parents received, because she's saying that, the budget is insufficient to allow them to meet their expenses. So, I raised the possibility of asking Medicaid to recalculate the budget.
Right. Right. You're on point, Michelle. When you do a recertification, you're going to have to resubmit the information based on the income again, right? Because if anything else hasn't changed, they just want to make sure, they just want to follow through with the income, right? So yeah, there's a form that's called, well, I'm not at my office right now. So there's a form that you could submit so that they could reevaluate the income and see if you qualify.
But the issue was that if you change anything, they would like reevaluate. That's the same as the person before?
If you change anything.
Meaning,
In general,
I mean, if her social security went up or something.
Right. Right.
well,
No.
It's going
I
to have
mean,
gone up
anything
anyway. I
change.
mean,
Someone told me, don't change anything. I was like, well, that's not.
But what do they mean by don't change anything?
So if her, I'm trying to think now. I can't think.
I mean, I can answer the question. I think in general, and we can take it offline because I don't want to take too much time for anybody else. But I think that the question is you mentioned that you support Medicaid application services, and I'm looking for someone that can help me look at an application, change an application if I need to, and feel comfortable with the changes and not put my mother's Medicaid services at high risk. I don't know if that's something you offer or if that's
absolutely.
if that's some place I could go, because that's something I'm in need of, because I have questions about that. Sure.
So
And
Joyce, is that something that
Okay, so like, okay, so basically whatever HRA asks for, I have to submit the accurate information to them. You know, we can't go around it, you know. So is if her income has gone up and any way, and you have to do a research, whatever information they're asking for, you have to submit. We can't, in other words, it has to be submitted no matter what to them, and they had to make the determination if she still qualifies or not.
Melissa, am I hearing though maybe the expenses went up and you would
Right.
like to reflect higher expenses, but you're worried that it might jeopardize Medicaid coverage totally? Is that what I was hearing?
yeah, there's just a lot of changes that have happened. My mother's Social Security has changed, her role in volunteering has changed. She has home care assistants, and I just feel like there's just I need help with reevaluating the whole application. I winged it the first time. I put everything very basic, and I would like help with resubmitting the application. So that's the general question, because if we get into income, expenses, and all that other stuff on this call, I think it would be too much.
Yeah. Joyce,
Yeah, I can help. If you, we can set up an appointment. You
yeah.
can call the number. We'll set up an appointment. You can come to my office and we can sit down and go over the application together and what documents and needs to be submitted with the application. I can help you with that. That's no problem.
Okay,
Absolutely.
perfect. Thank you. Maybe drop your number and every piece of information in the chat, and that way
Sure.
Melissa and any other participant can grab it. Malini,
Yes.
we'll end
Yes,
with you. And
yeah,
then
I'll be very fast. This was amazing. That's what I wanted to say. It was really amazing because you've learned so much, and I can't thank everybody enough.
yes.
I know it's based on a think tank caregiving applying for Medicaid, but I thought I'll bring up that it's so important to know that when Medicaid works with home care agencies, that I've experienced it myself, that the person who comes home, what they can do, you know, in my case, they'd even changed the will. And I just let it go. I kind of just hinted to the Queens DA office, but then I heard it's a Manhattan DA office case. But maybe something that I don't know if we're capable of bringing out in the next think tank is how to prevent elder financial abuse, especially based on if anyone has watched the film I Care a Lot. It's really amazing. Everybody should have a look at it because I've been bitten. And I love to spread the word that it's so important who is in your home because anything is possible.
Good.
What's the name of the film?
I Care a Lot.
I Care a Lot.
Queensboro Council for Social Welfare, our partner organization, Joan Lawfer, brought that up in our last think tank, that we do have to be careful about elder abuse and that that particular organization has educated the public on elder abuse.
Yeah.
So yes, it's all about education, right, Raquel? We
Yeah.
have to educate ourselves on all facets of caregiving.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you, Malini. That was
Yeah,
a really insightful message to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will make sure to add as we plan more and more think tanks and, you know, the necessary follow-ups, right? For your
Right.
for these. So thank you.
As far as the take action for this think tank, piggybacking on the last one, Katie Hine from Sunnyside said that the system, the federal system, is not set up to care for elderly people. So part of the take action is we need legislative changes, is what she said. But in that, that is not totally in our control, but we can take action by educating ourselves, by going to Sunnyside Community Services, by taking advantage of Michelle's counsel, and by checking the resources at cwny.org. So that is, and we always partner with our partner organizations. We cannot do this alone. Right, Raquel?
It takes a village.
It takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all for your participation. Raquel?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, all our guests, all of our staff members, and Michelle and Christine, thank you so much. This has been very informative and educational, and we will we'll post something today just to once everything is up, and we will you know, direct the rest of our population to be able to get this information because it's so important. And I have actually one last final question. Should I start leaving everything in my children's name right now? Right this second, right now? No. I'm just kidding.
Your poor husband.
Yes.
If you do that, what about your husband?
Oh, he's going with me wherever I go. So if you're in trouble, if I'm in trouble, he's in trouble.
Yeah, but I do suggest after my case with the person trying to change a will, which I really didn't care about, it's okay. It was for my daughter, that you must have a will. You must have it safe. You must know the lawyer's name who did the will. You must make sure, and that lawyer died. So now what do I do next? Those steps are very
good. Maybe we'll have a think tank around will, because even now I've learned that some stats came out just recently. I think it's the age group of 25 to 35. Women are really developing their personal wealth and growth, and they also need to be educated about what to prepare for. So something that just popped up to on my feed just now was a woman who is, let's say, 40, give someone who is 30 a piece of advice on anything. And that's what we need to do, right? Be the stewards of the next generation. So thank you all. Cecilia has her hand up before we sign off. Cecilia?
Yeah, sorry. I've been listening, and I appreciate everyone's questions and the presentations. But I also wanted to comment on the take action. To me, it's like so important that we as an organization do take action. Sometimes our elected officials come to these think tanks and listen to us because they know that we are with you. We are with the people that need the help. So I just wanted to mention that we will be making sure that we communicate what's happening in the lives of the women and what the needs are. So even though, we cannot change laws, we cannot, make Medicare not be so bureaucratic, but we will make sure that we do communicate that to our elected officials that do come and listen to us. Many of them, some of them. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
This was excellent. This was excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, we're signing off, ladies. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Stay warm, stay healthy, stay safe, but most importantly, stay connected to the CWNY.
Always.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for participating.
Thank you, Victoria.
Great job, everyone.